Welcome to EnVision Center News, where we discuss community impact and involvement with today's nonprofit leaders and philanthropists.
Lucas, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about how you got into the role you're in with the organization we're about to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Lucas Sheetz. I'm the executive director at the Bonner Gospel Mission, and I was put into that place in, I think it was May of last year was when I got the title of executive director. Before that, I had been involved there for probably about 3 or 4 months, and as kind of like a training type thing. And then
You were training for executive director, or you were just training to be a part of it, and then that position opened up, and it was like,
yeah, no, it was more of a hired March 1st as like a in training type of a position for the director position.
Okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yeah. So specifically, there's not a huge amount of employees there. In fact, there's only 2 of us there, and so yeah, that was my intended goal was to become the director.
Okay. And were you involved in this kind of work before, nonprofit work or something, maybe not that's for profit, but similar?
No, not at all. Before I went to the Bonner Gospel Mission, I was an independent contractor. I did landscaping and construction. I had my own company. So yeah,
That's quite the 180. What was the catalyst for that?
To be completely honest, it was all a God thing. He woke me up in the middle of the night and said that there was more things that he had in store for me, and I didn't know what that was until I said, okay, well, I'm good with whatever direction you want to take me, and I don't have to know what it is first in order for me to submit to your will. And through a crazy set of circumstances, Bonner Gospel Mission was where I landed.
Wow. So was there anything on their end where you come in and you want to be involved, and probably most of the people have either maybe been long-term volunteers there or worked in other nonprofit work or whatever, and you come in and you're like, I'm a contractor. Executive director, maybe? Like,
Yeah.
how did that work? How was that job interview?
It was pretty strange because I did call on it. So after I had this midnight wake up and telling me to look, and my wife and I had talked it over, and I said, well, I think we just need to be open to anything, and that could be a different job, or that could be some different types of service. I'm pretty involved in my local church, and so I was thinking maybe it was something there as well. I didn't really know, and so this came up on a simple job search up in Sandpoint, and it was first page, and I called on it, and they were like, very confused that I was calling because there wasn't actually an open position at the time.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
they were had somebody else in training who wasn't quite going to take over the position and wasn't going to kind of fit. It wasn't really his time to do that, and so I called out of the blue, even though they had already made the decision that they're going to start searching. They just hadn't started searching yet, and so the first sit down I had with one of the board of directors to kind of get to know me was like, how did you get to this? And I said, well, would it be strange if I told you that it was a God thing, that he told me to take a look at things, and you guys came up the first page?
Yeah. Well, with that crowd, it probably is not weird at all.
It wasn't that weird, and in fact, it's a pretty big like spirit confirmation type of thing. Like, oh wow, okay, God might be providing something for our ministry here. Let's get to know Lucas a little bit more, and so. Yeah, so that's kind of how that went. It's not completely out of my realm of expertise. Before I was a contractor, I did go to school for museum studies, so I have a master's in museum studies from the University of Washington. I worked in education departments and in nonprofit education, nonprofit management through my master's program there. So I do have a little bit of a background of running a nonprofit and being involved in that type of 501c3 type of world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Gospel Mission is like a pretty well-known brand, I guess you'll say, or name of an organization, but I'm sure you get people all the time that don't actually know what y'all do.
Yes.
So can you break it down for us? What are the services, resources that you offer? Why do you exist?
Yeah. So the the Bonner Gospel Mission exists to see God move in the lives of men who need some help. And we believe that if they start following Jesus' teachings and hear the good news, which is what gospel means, good news, that he came and died for them and that their sins can be forgiven, that they'll start making some better choices in their lives. And so what we also do as a secondary, that we considered our secondary mission, would be to provide shelter and food and clothing, a safe place to live, a place that they can start rebuilding their lives and heal. So that's what we offer, is housing and food, 3 squares a day for the guys that stay there. We also are blessed with clothing and other donations that we're able to kind of outfit them again for the next step of life, for whatever reason that brought them there. So that's the main service that we offer, is the presentation of the gospel to them, but then also taking care of their physical needs, places, people that don't have anywhere really else to go or any money to stay anywhere else or something like that.
How many people can you house or take care of, I guess, at a time?
Right around 10 is about where we're at right now. We have kind of like a dorm type area. There's a couple of like partitions and separations and stuff, but so we plus or minus 10. I think if we were to cram guys in there, we could probably get 13 or 14. Yeah. But that's about where we generally are. Sometimes 8 or 9, but pretty steady right around there.
Okay, so is there typically like a wait list or something like that, or is that usually that's the need constantly?
So we're a little bit different as far as how we do it from maybe what other buddy might understand about like shelters on a wait list, or you call and get in line type of a thing. Ours is a first come, first served basis, and they get in via application of an interview, in-person interview with me. And so we don't have a long like wait list and all right, next person's up, next person's out type of a thing. Everything is done with a case-by-case basis, really focusing on the individual, whether or not the gospel mission is really going to be able to help them, and whether they're ready to come into our place.
And so how long does someone typically use, or is it just you can't even give an average?
If I were to shoot for an average, we're probably in the 20, 30 days, but there's big ranges. Since we don't have any very absolute set, you have to be out by this time. Everything is like I said, a case by case. So even not only letting them in, but once they're at the mission, we really try and be attuned to their needs and how much we're helping. We kind of pull the line between a hand out and a hand up type of a thing. And somebody that's there that's not really moving forward, it's not really helping them much anymore. They'll be given an out date of a certain amount of time. Like, okay, well, we've helped you about as much as we can. You're getting a little too comfortable here at the mission. But there have been some longer stays, and those are usually they have a justification of, well, I don't know if anybody's tried to rent up here in this area anymore, saving up for first and last and deposit and everything like that, or getting on a waiting list for some sort of Section 8 or some sort of assistance program. Like sometimes that takes a little while. And so we're cognizant to those needs that they have.
So do you typically help folks like find employment, or how do you get them out basically and no longer needing your services?
Well, you guys are the Community Resource and Vision Center has been extremely helpful with helping point to different resources that there are in this area. So that type of thing, I introduce them to some of the people that have some professional connections. We have some guys that are on disability and they're or hurt, or they have some sort of disability, and so they go to someplace like the PISNI, the Pacific Northwest Special Needs or the Special Help, and so you go help them through their Social Security or their disability because they've been hurt or something like that. So there's more of a trying to encourage them and connect them to other resources in the area rather than me doing it myself for them. I like to promote that type of self-responsibility, that accountability of, well, you're going to get yourself out of this hole by really doing it yourself, like, transformity versus conformity. I'm not just trying to force something down on them. I'd really like for them to take that type of initiative and start working on that on their own. So, it's kind of a mixed bag of helping them out. There's plenty of times where I take them and I introduce them to an apartment manager place
Sure.
and help them fill out. I know the guys come here and get help filling out applications and stuff like that.
And is there any is it just 18 and up?
Yeah, so it's only a men's mission, and so yes, you have to be an adult. Everything that they do, they come in voluntarily, so there's no like court ordering
Sure.
or anything like
Yeah.
that, right? And so during my interview process with them, I run through the rules and the regulations and how the mission is run and what's going to be expected of them there, and you know I'm dealing with men, and I look them in the eye and I tell them, you know, what you're putting down and, you know, you're signing and you're saying that you're going to be a guest here. You know, I'm going to hold you to your word. And it's just another teaching tool that we can use to be like, well, this is something you need to take serious and you need to, you know, make sure you're living up to your word. And, you know, and if you don't, that's okay. There's no hard feelings. But, you know, what you said and you signed up for, you're not following through with. And so it's that type of they come in and they agree to that type of a thing. So, you know, from 18 all the way up to, we don't offer any other services, so we kind of cap it off at being too old and not being able to take care of yourself,
Sure.
but pretty open.
Yeah. And you said that there's basically two employees, but I'm assuming you have a regimen of volunteers as well. So what are the different ways that folks can get involved and volunteer, help out? What sort of things are you looking for in volunteers? And are you mainly looking for just men?
So we have volunteers that help with you know, with the needs. I mean, the shelter's already there, right? And so obviously we have to keep the lights on, the utilities and stuff like that going so they can take showers. We can do laundry and stuff there. But one thing that we go through the absolute most is food. And so a lot of our volunteers are people that bring meals or bring food. That's one of the greatest way. I mean, not only just because it's a practical physical need, needing to eat, but also because it's a way that somebody from the community can demonstrate that they're thinking about them or that they care for them. You know, taking time out of your day not only to cook yourself a meal, but maybe prepare a meal for guys, for men that are down on the luck and stuff like that. Then that really goes a long way in demonstrating that their community cares for them. So that would be one of the big things. I have volunteers that come and help with clothing and with donations,
like sorting through things.
Through things. Yeah, I have a couple of volunteers that come through and they help me keep everything organized and stuff, because lots of times the guys that come through there, they may have been, due to some circumstance, just showing up with not butts on their back.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard to start building things up if you don't have a few changes of clothes and appropriate wear. So there's another thing that people do as far as volunteering, but that's a little bit more on the donation side, would be, you know, donating clothes and outerwear, gloves, stuff like that.
Yeah, especially I would guess seasonal stuff. They need the cold weather gear. Yeah, when it's
Absolutely.
Though we've had a very mild winter so far.
This winter has been crazy.
Is it even winter?
I know. I saw a sign on the other side of the day. It says, "Hey, 64 days till spring," and I'm like, kind of seems like spring's already
Yesterday
here.
it really felt like spring or fall. Yeah. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked.
No, that's all right. And then one other thing for the volunteers, we do a couple of things in the community as well. So sometimes we partner with some of the local churches and do stuff. So we'll need volunteers. I think last year we were at like a worship center picnic outlet in the park, like the Sandpoint Pavilion. We just got done with a giant Christmas dinner that we do at the Sandpoint Community Hall, where I have about 40 or 50 volunteers to help put that on. It's a free Christmas dinner. So there's other like special events and things that we do that volunteers are always very helpful in you know, pulling off something like that, especially when you have an organization of me that's there trying to organize everything as well as running the day to day.
Yeah. What you kind of touched on it maybe already a little bit, which was that misunderstandings or people not quite understanding how exactly you operate, with like the example of there's not like a wait list that you like rotate people through. What are some other ways, if any, that people sometimes just don't, they think you provide something that you don't, or vice versa?
I think probably the biggest overall one is that, we're called the Gospel Mission. We really look at ourselves more as a ministry than like a homeless shelter, let's say. And so there is some misconceptions there that, we run things, we're completely independent. We're not tied to any other larger organization or any church. It's just our own independent ministry that gets supported by people in the area, from businesses, individuals. So we have a different maybe mission or vision statement than maybe some other homeless shelters as far as misconceptions. And then other things, I think, like a while back we used to do soup kitchens on Sundays. And so there's some institutional memory that that's what we used to do. And we just found that we had like the same few people showing up every Sunday. And there's other churches and other organizations that were doing that, and it wasn't quite as in alignment. So we don't do that anymore. But that's something that people kind of remember that we used to do.
Yeah.
But I would say that's probably the biggest one. Is we run our ministry is that it's a ministry, not just a walk in, walk out homeless shelter. We're really trying to present the gospel of Jesus Christ to them, and because we're convinced that that's going to help change their lives.
So how do you do that? Is it like there's a required Bible study or something like that? How do you share the gospel with the guys staying there, other than obviously just living among, you're not living there, but interacting with them? Is that enough, or is there some more kind of like standardized ways?
Yeah. So we do structure it with Bible studies every morning. So
Okay.
I run a Bible study every morning from 7 in the morning to 8 in the morning. And we do a whole hour Bible study. It's a requirement if you're
Okay.
there.
Okay.
There is some very small exceptions of like they finally found a job or employment and they have to work earlier in the morning. But then I work with them individually and go through the Bible with them and have some homework for them to do. So they'll read sections and write stuff out for me. So that's the main one, would be the led Bible studies by myself. And then we do have individuals that come in and do evening Bible studies, some praise and worship. We have a volunteer that comes in. Oh, talk about another volunteer opportunity. He likes to sing and do worship songs, and so he comes in and prays with the guys, and then does praise and worship on one of the nights of the week. So that would be the main way that we spread the gospel. We also do, have them go to church on Sundays and.
Do they get to choose, or is there just a church that you have a van that you take people to, or do they get options with what church?
Yeah. I mean, we don't have any direct affiliation with any specific church. I just ask that they go to a Bible believing church here in the area. Yeah, that the church is based on the Bible, and and most of them take buses. They often have, will be a few guys there at the mission that have vehicles, and so they carpool usually.
Okay.
Or they take the bus. I mean, the spot bus runs on Sunday, and so
Yeah.
they can get around. But no, we don't have any sort of van or anything. Plus,
Yeah.
I'm busy on Sundays.
You're taking care of your own family.
Yes, I do have a family of my own that I go and take to church. So
Yeah, fair enough. So do you I guess they know what they're signing up for when they sign up, right?
Yeah,
So
that's part of the in-person interview process.
Right. So no, you don't really, I probably don't have a lot of pushback, generally speaking, with people not wanting to go to church or do the Bible study or whatever.
I would say probably not like a lot of pushback, but I do think that, we come across very many. Like I said, I couldn't answer really exactly how long the average stay is, because we'll get people that come in and they're out by the end of the day because they realize it's not for them. And then you do get some that are, you don't have to be like, say, a Christian to be at the Bonner Gospel Mission whatsoever, but that's not going to change the way that we go about preaching and talking about the gospel, and our requirements aren't going to change just because you don't believe. And so there, every once in a while there might be somebody that doesn't really agree with it, but that's the reason why it's not under any sort of conversion or compulsion or anything like that, because that's fine. I don't hold anything against them. If the rules are something that they no longer want to be under, then that's their choice. They can leave.
They can be on
not
there,
a big deal.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite success stories? I know you haven't been there super long, but what are some stories you like to tell?
Yeah, I haven't been there that long, but surprisingly, I have quite a few.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So one quick one would be that there's a gentleman that found. Well, the Lord visited him while he was in jail, and kind of got a hold of him, and he knew he was going to have to change his life. And after about, I want to say 20 years of addiction to alcohol and drugs, he decided that he was going to just completely, totally stop and not go back to it. And then he also had some legal issues he needed to take to. So he voluntarily turned himself into court and got his sentences reduced because he was able to demonstrate. I got to go to court with him and say, well, his life has changed and he is not the same person that he used to be.
Wow.
He voluntarily turned himself into jail to finish up his time, and he is now out. He's got a vehicle, got a great job, making decent money. He's got his own place, and gets to now see his kid again too, because he was such a wreck before. So that's a great one.
Yeah.
I love that guy. He still comes and says hi to me and everything like that, and I see him probably on a weekly to bi-weekly basis.
Oh, that's so great. Do a lot of folks like that then maybe turn into volunteers or?
Yeah, and it's here. So my Bible studies get attended fairly well in the mornings too. So I probably usually have 2 or 3 others that aren't even staying at the mission anymore that still like to come in and do Bible studies in the morning with us, and then I also encourage them to drop by and have a chat with me, because a lot of it is in-person communication and a little bit of counseling, a little bit of big brother talk type of thing, and just like to see how they're still doing, encourage them to stay on the straight and narrow, and just keep those relationships up so that we can encourage that lasting change rather than just a temporary change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it mainly like people referring, they check themselves in? How do guys kind of find you or know about you?
Yeah, it is all over the place. I mean, I'll get calls every week from people that want their brother, cousin, uncle, son, whatever, to come in there. And in those cases, I generally try and steer them to say, well, he needs to be ready to do it himself. I need him to call me and him to set up the interview. That personal accountability, responsibility, right? They have to be ready to change. You can't be forced to. And then simple Google searches will pull up someone that may have stayed in a shelter before or at a mission before. They'll get to a new city and they'll just be like, all right, well, where's the free place to stay? And they'll type in shelter and we'll come up. So on those types of things. And then, the Bonner Gospel Mission's been there since, in that current location since the early 90s, late 80s. And many people that have been around or see somebody that's homeless or know somebody who's struggling, a lot of word of mouth. And so, when we're nearly going on 40 years of
Like
being
I said,
an organization,
recognition.
people know.
Yeah.
So
What are going back to the needs for like doing food, cooking a meal? So there aren't rules about like home cooked meals, or someone can just come in with their lasagna that they made and share it?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's weird, like schools won't always let
and if we were
yeah.
tied to a big, maybe national organization or
be.
something, there might be some more of that. But, this community's been really good to us. And so, of course, I peruse things that get brought in and we take a look and make sure it's not sketchy. Hey, nobody sketchy, bring stuff in. But, it's that personal touch. It's probably best to give me a call or an email and do a scheduling type of a thing, right?
Don't just drop in with the spaghetti or whatever.
I'm also probably not going to. I mean, there's 10 guys there. I mean, they go through. I mean, anybody that has fed a bunch of men at any point in time, when you're doing that 3 times a day, it's a lot of food. It's a lot of stuff that we go through. So even if you do bring something in unannounced, it's most likely will get used, later that day, the next day, something like that. Things that are like casseroles that can get frozen and then maybe like be used at a later time. Those are awesome. And then of course any sort of non-perishable food that maybe isn't like fully cooked into a meal or something, but cans or stuff like that. Meat is always super helpful because it's expensive to buy. We can freeze it, and so we have freezer space available. So if somebody brings meat and we can put it in the freezer, save it for a meal later down. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, the more I'm asking, we're talking about this, the more questions I have actually about. So does somebody on like cooking duty or something like
yeah,
that? So a guy gets like assigned, this is what you're making tonight kind of thing.
So some of the rules of the mission are they got to do chores, right? They have to give back to the mission. They have to be part of it. So we got everything from firewood to cleaning to laundry to cooking, sweeping, mopping, stuff like. And then in the winter there's shoveling and snow blowing, and in the summer there's yard work to do. So all those chores are done by guys that are there at the mission. It's a requirement for them to kind of give back and be a part of the mission and doing that. So we require that. So right now we have a guy by the name of Tim, and he does our cooking, and he's great. He loves it. Usually there's somebody there that actually likes to cook.
I was gonna say, has anybody discovered like this is what I want to do, and then they go get a job at a restaurant?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have some pretty good relationship to some of the local restaurants because lots of the guys that come through, and cooks and prep cooks, line cooks, dishwashers, those are often in need, especially in the busy time here in Sandpoint. And so, there's a ton of that type of a crossover.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do people fight over like I had bathroom duty yesterday? Is it just like with my children?
Yeah, well, being the director, sometimes I see and hear those things, and then sometimes I'm sure that happens in the background. But when you're staying at a place, because we don't charge anything, they stay there for free, and thank you to the community that supports us that we're able to do that. But yeah. That type of grumbling doesn't usually go over all that well with me. If you're sitting whining about having to clean the bathroom that you're using, you're let's just say your spirit might not be in the right place.
Yeah.
If that's the type of whining and complaining that you're doing while you're there, someplace that's offering you those. So that's all. You got 9-10 guys all living together. You got to work on. You got to work those types of things out.
Yeah. I mean, any group of people, men,
absolutely.
women,
Kids, old, everything.
Right.
Absolutely.
When you get people together, that's just what happens. We just recently had Christine DeNova of Idaho Families on the podcast, and she told us that her organization is working towards starting a home for teen boys, and so that's kind of a cool development. I don't know how. They have goals, but who knows how quickly that will come to fruition. But do you find, her organization is like, we've been hearing that this is a need, and so we're trying to answer the call, basically, and meet this need, counselors and just other people in similar spaces and circles that you are saying we need this. Are there any other areas that you see there is a need for that's maybe not currently being met by a nonprofit? It's not something that's really something that y'all would take on.
I think I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So I thought that was awesome that that they are moving in that direction, but also like, darn it, that we need it. You know what I mean? So it's like this double-edged sword in a way. But what are some of especially because the homeless problem here is growing. It's not going away, right?
No.
So I'm wondering if you just see that there's gaps maybe out there in terms of nonprofit services and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably point out more of the guys' struggles that like the men that come to the mission, but there's not necessarily always a nonprofit that would be able to do it. I mean, so one of the biggest things is housing. Obviously they're there because they don't have any other place to go, but the availability and the affordability of housing, especially as somebody who has nothing. So he comes to me and he literally has no bank account, and I mean maybe not even an ID or something like that. No money whatsoever. It's like, how do you help this individual get from that position to being able to be stable and on their own and in their own place? Huge challenge. Yeah. Absolutely huge challenge. And then even the guys that do end up, finding work and, they're starting to maybe put some money aside because they can save any money on rent, and a lot of money on food too from being there at the mission is, just saving up enough to be able to put down that first and last if they're just trying to get into an apartment and a deposit. Take a little bit of time. So the housing is always something that is a challenge for the guys that are at the mission. Another thing that I would probably say would be, and I know that, and there's the nonprofits that are here, but like work placement and gaining skills is probably the next set, because we'll have some people that come in, and we have 2 guys in there right now that had injuries. So one had a back injury or a shoulder injury, and they used to be X, and they can no longer do X, and so that has kind of started them down a path of, I can no longer be a car mechanic, or and they've done that for 30 years, and that's what they know how to do, and now they have to walk with crutches, or they have a bad back and they can't lift anything, and so it's like, okay, what does a 50-year-old do? Yeah. When that type of thing that he's always done, and often, unfortunately, they'll go into drugs or alcohol, or that if they was already present, that will take over their lives and then lead them down a path. And then when they're trying to crawl themselves back out and they can't do what it was that they used to do, being able to get some new type of either job training or profession training, or just like placement to get into the bottom level of something and get up, I think is also something that's super helpful for the guys that would come through the mission.
You talked about some events and stuff that you've done in the past and are still doing. Do you have anything upcoming? Any sort of events? Nothing
large. So again, this is where my newness to the organization is going to come into play here, because I'm also kind of forging my own path as the director. Like how am I going to be kind of the executor there? I do have a few things in the works about doing some community outreach. One thing that it's nice, well, let's just take the Christmas dinner that we just had. So we probably had about 130 to 140 people come through and share dinner, and that was it was awesome. And like I said, 40 plus volunteers. It was just one thing that we get to help provide that type of like family community environment to share a meal and break bread with. And, that's one thing that a lot of the guys that come through the mission are also kind of looking for. And one thing that they end up really enjoying while they're there at the mission is that sense of family almost, because oftentimes when you burn a bunch of bridges and you light a whole bunch of couches on fire, you start craving that again, and if we can provide a little bit of that. So along with those lines, I think that I'm going to try and start partnering with a few places, and I might partner with the Hoot Owl, Josh, the owner there. He and I were talking about doing some sort of community food and awesome. Lunches or dinners or something like that.
They did something for Thanksgiving.
They do a Thanksgiving
where they did free
one.
It was crazy.
And we were on the radio. I think Josh and I were on the radio together, promoting those, around that time of the year, because, it's long-standing traditions, both for his establishment and then also for the Bonner Gospel Mission doing the Christmas dinner. And we were like, hey, it'd be kind of fun for us to kind of partner and do that and, put it together as like free to the community. And maybe some of the guys at the mission can serve others, even though they've been served, they get the opportunity to then serve others in the community. And then, Josh at the restaurant, he also gets the opportunity of taking some of the cooking and the food that he loves and provide that to people as well. So I think that's something that we're probably looking at doing as far as events are concerned here in the near future. But I tell you, with one person there at the mission, doing one giant event a year
feels like plenty.
It's quite a bit. It takes quite a few months of things to do. Personally, I like doing this type of stuff. So I do go to like luncheons, or I go to little groups or little membership groups. I visit churches and stuff like that, and just kind of give updates on the mission and how they're doing and what we're doing. The guys that are there sometimes give testimonies. So that's another outreach but that's a little bit more of like me personally going out and doing that.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, Lucas, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure listeners know about, what you do or a need that you have, or something that they should know if they want to get involved? We've covered a lot, so it feels like we've covered most things, but maybe there's something we missed.
Well, we unabashedly preach the gospel of Jesus Christ there, and any of the listeners that are there, if you are a believer or you have some type of faith, prayer is so powerful. Mm-hmm. Lifting up somebody else in prayer and doing it together. So if you got a little family or you got a small group or whatever you have, I know that the power of the Holy Spirit works through there. And I know that a lot of the guys that have been there have been touched through either donations, or they've been touched through just feeling like they have something on their side.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's the people that pray over the mission all the time. And so if I could ask for anything from people that might be listening to this podcast or watching it or whatever, then that the power of prayer is amazing. And if you are somebody that believes in it, throw a couple Bonner Gospels away, especially the men, because they could really use that.
Awesome. A great ask. Well, Lucas, thank you for the work that you do. It's very important, and we're glad to have the Bonner Gospel Mission as kind of one of the backbone, like the nonprofit backbones of this community. So thank you for what you do, and I'll be saying a couple prayers for you tonight.
Oh. Well, thank you, Connie. It was a pleasure, and I appreciate being able to be on there.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. For more information, you can go to crecIdaho.com. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again soon.